everybody, and welcome to Failcast F1, your fortnightly frolicking of Formula One. And alongside myself, Mr. Bolkenberg, is our not very well, slightly floppy taco friend. How you doing, Esteban?
Hello, mate. Yeah, I have been sick for about a month. It sort of came, and then it went, and then it came back again, then it went away again. Kind of like Lotus. And I just can't seem to shift it. I don't know what's going on. But how are you? How are you? Less about me, more about you.
Yeah.
What's going on?
All good, thank you. All good. I'm buzzing from seeing some F1 2018 gameplay at E3, so that was good. Which I think I'll touch on a little bit once we're off and running. And I'm super excited for us to be doing a kind of mid-season special where we actually, congratulations to our champion for Season 8 of Failcast.
Thank you.
So yeah, where we've kind of come to the end, it doesn't happen very often. And we're waiting for the next game, which is shaping up to look quite good. We thought we'd do couple of crazes. So we're going for the Class 1 in Classic mode. So that's everything from the 2000 areas. Although he was just speaking before we went on air about how we aren't necessarily excited about the current selection. So more of those F1 28, and they said they'd be announcing some soon. And a crazy midnight Bahraini Grand Prix.
Grand Prix, yeah. I mean, that's what the kids are calling it now. But on the street, so I've heard. Yeah, I mean, it's our non-denominational inter-season special. I'm excited for it. It's funny, I obviously lacked imagination because all these options are there to do these like crazy special event things, and it never even crossed my mind to do it. Never even crossed my mind. Shall we dive in and kick things off?
Yeah. So we're doing a 100% race for once, and no qualifying. And, oh, no, that's not the word that I wanted to do. That was the button that I wanted to press. And yeah, we got plenty of action, I'm sure, that will come along. We'll start off dry, but we've programmed in some weather, but we don't know when it's going to happen. So you can be as surprised as the rest of us. And happy Le Mans weekend to anyone that's watching as well.
Do you know, I completely forgot it was Le Mans until, that's how sick I've been. I've had like a fever of it's like 38 degrees, 39 degrees. And I didn't even know what day it was, mate. So I completely forgot it was Le Mans, but, you know, at least that's something else to talk about as well, right? Because, you know, Kazuki Nakajima suddenly amazeballs.
Yeah. And actually, whilst we... let's go for it now.
Sorry, hold on. Oh. It's randomed me in on pole.
And I'm second.
How's that for a random grid? This grid doesn't feel very random, Codemasters. Doesn't feel very random at all.
No. And I don't... Well, it's going to have to be default setup, I think, isn't it? Because I've not got a setup that would work for these.
I will try my regular Bahrain setup on this insane... I forgot how ugly the cars were prior to the 2009 Formula change.
Yeah, because the McLaren looks like it's been stillborn from space, and it's all
from
the
space,
weird, yeah, it's like the little weird things. Like, I love the livery of the Renault, but why are there the weirdest like tentacles on my front wing at the same time? Bizarre.
I don't know. It seems like, I mean, it's just that typical thing, right? If it's not explicitly in the rules, then they'll stick a wing on wherever humanly possible. And it was funny watching it. I remember watching it happen really in real time, starting sort of 2005, where every year the cars just got madder and madder and madder until someone said, "God damn it, I've had enough."
Yeah.
This is the formula now. No wings for anybody. This is why we can't have nice things.
Exactly.
I set it for a formation lap, so if you're ready to begin...
I am ready to begin. I've changed my wings because I know that there's some soggy biscuit coming, so that is good.
Oh, balls. I didn't think about that. I just loaded a dry setup for cars that aren't this car.
Are you sure? Are you sure you're okay?
It'll be fine. It will be fine.
However, you get to lead away on pole as champion of the.
Actually, maybe that's why it did it. Maybe it recognised my natural authority.
I can't.
The cars did sound so much better.
Yeah, it was
Cars
really
did sound so much better.
It was really noticeable when I went to the 2014 British Grand Prix, and you had 22 cars going off the grid for the F1 race, and it sounded really, really great. Going around and qualifying, and then you'd have like Grand Prix GP2 come out. Hello, David. Thank you very much for joining us there. Hope you're well. And I hope you're multi-screening with us and Le Mans at the same time. But yeah, they had one Sebastian Vettel Red Bull 2010 car that went round, and everyone was like fingers in ears. And the partner that I was with at the time turned around to me and went, "So that's why you said that these cars are quiet then?" Because he was perfectly fine with 22 of the normal ones. So yeah, it's hilarious. But he was like, my ears, my brain, my everything.
But that's really what it should be, right?
I think so.
Not that I'm advocating.
Lemons and you face with stuck out tongue.
Oh, okay, David wants a triple screen, one with you, one with me, and one with the Rose.
Mate, I'm still not connected, my friend. I need to set up the new Failcast account actually. But my connection issues persist. I got sick after the last podcast, and I've been a complete mess ever since. So I haven't done any of the things. I meant to do the things. I didn't do the things. Sorry.
The things.
Oh, I blitzed that. I blitzed that warm-up lap a little bit, but I wanted to see if my setup was going to kill me or not. But actually, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty good.
Yeah.
So, we will break with tradition a little bit then. Do you want to talk very briefly about the news out of Le Mans? What's been going on?
Zero needs a par to get stuff done, winking face.
PA. There you go. Thank you, phone. I suppose for me, Le Mans, I've not kept up with what's today, but the big thing that was going around on Twitter was the Autosport headline of Nakajima puts Alonso's car on pole. And the general Twitterverse outrage of, well, they have to. You can't not be on Twitter and be outraged just at life in general. So I found that really.
I'm furious on Twitter every day.
Just every day.
Oh wow, that was a horrific start.
I can't remember where we break. Oh, not there.
It's difficult. Every car looks the same.
It is. This is exactly what Ferrari want. Formula Ferrari. Oh, and they're all very different in the way how they drive and stop. Oh.
Oh shit. Yes, you're right. They are.
Oh, I can see carnage. You all right there? Do you need to restart?
No, it's all right. It was my own fault. I outbraked myself.
Oh, it's very. No, wait.
It's funny. You spend the entire season driving the modern cars, and suddenly, like, the classics feel completely insane.
Mm-hmm.
We have to mention as well. We're playing with 3-car teams to try out one of Bernie's madcap ideas.
Yeah. So this is what it would be like if test drivers would be allowed in the third car for their own little mini championship.
Oh wow, I'm going to be last very, very soon.
Are you damaged or?
Yeah, I have knackered my front wing by driving into the side of Sari. Is that Zari?
Okay.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Sorry.
But it's good. Right. This is the first lap car where we can never speak and we can never actually host a podcast.
No, that's true.
Why don't we crack on? I was surprised to see Nakajima's head pop above the parapet, mainly because, he hardly covered himself in glory in Formula 1, and he's just sort of he's there, like Belgium or Cheddar, and I just, for him to be like the deciding factor, and apparently it was like problem is I've got to remember that this is endurance racing and 2 seconds isn't as big there as it is in Formula 1, but apparently he was 2 seconds faster than anyone else, which, again, you know, just because I'm so used to dealing in Formula 1 terms, I was like, wow, Kazuki, but, then you remember,
but
no.
Kazuki's had a really good endurance record beforehand. He did have a bit of a habit of doing a bit of binning, as did Kobayashi when he got his chance in the Ferrari and stuck it straight in the wall. But Kazuki's actually not a bad endurance driver at all. And there was a big uproar of the way how Autosport have basically framed that it's not the important story is that it's Alonso's car rather than it being Nakajima getting pole. I'm not quite sure where I sit on it, because there's loads of people going, this is horrible, lazy journalism, and I expect those are people who deal with endurance racing constantly and love Le Mans and follow those series. But I guess this is a prime crossover period, and I think people need to remember that is that when someone comes along and does a guest star and they're a headline sports person, this is the time to try and grab people who haven't necessarily orientated in that circle before, and you need to kind of push it in a relatable way so that those people can come across, and they may then become fans and then may be the outraged person the next time that happens.
Equals when followers read it, Alonso's car on pole, F1 fans read it as well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, Alonso was the one who really sort of pushed Nakajima as a hero viewpoint, you know. I know that he was full of praise for Nakajima, so I don't think it's solely Autosport's fault, although of course the commenters will say that. It's funny how Twitter just fills you with an apocalyptic rage over relatively minor stuff.
It does. It reminds me of I do like a little bit of Frankie Boyle and his New World Order, and it's just his outlook on life is just what Twitter is in a nutshell, where everything is just we're all going to die.
Still though, it's interesting that now we're in a situation which we predicted anyway, that Alonso's ending up in a very seriously competitive position somewhere other than F1. And I don't know if you saw it, but I retweeted another Autosport article not long after the last podcast, actually, where he said, endurance racing is my priority. We're competitive there, so it's my priority. And I think Jenny Goward commented on it, saying, ooh, handbags at dawn or whatever, but like, it was obvious. Anyone could have seen that coming.
Yeah.
What that 2004 Ferrari is fast.
It is. The leader is getting well away from the rest of us.
It's just like, we said this before we went live.
He said though 0. And he said
Sorry?
prior to the season.
I didn't know he'd said that prior to the season, actually. I must have missed that one. But you know, it's...
For wins by Monaco, I focus on WEC.
Okay.
Well, I mean, maybe Monaco 2025, if they start making the right changes.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I'm struggling to find a team other than Williams, really, that's doing as much wrong as McLaren is right now. I'm already going to derail the podcast by pointing out that if you were a McLaren fan, and you know there was the McLaren Plus fan club, right?
Yeah.
That's the last of the traditional Formula 1 fan clubs, where you pay a membership fee and they send you a little card in the post and some bits and bobs and stuff.
And you love some merchandise, don't you?
I do. I'm a whore for merchandise. And they sent an email around and said, hey, we're getting rid of it. And I was pretty bummed by that, because I thought, well, this is the last Formula 1 fan club left that I consider to be legit. And they said, well, don't, people shouldn't complain, because by making it free, we're opening it up to a lot more fans, and we're going to still do cool stuff for people who've signed up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, okay, well, let's see how it goes. And then I found out on Twitter today they have membership cards of different colours based on some sort of unwritten rank. So there's gold, silver, and papaya membership cards. They're very nice, very stylish. Now, I was a member of McLaren Plus, and I haven't got one. And I was reading the Twitter thread, and apparently these cards are secret, and she wasn't supposed to be posting it on Twitter. And when people are already annoyed that they can't get their hands on, like, McLaren fan articles anymore, they go and make an exclusive batch for, like, a handful of people who are, like, super active on social media, and you think, oh, McLaren. It's getting ridiculous now, you know, they just do everything wrong. I can't remember the last time they got something right. Press conferences, picking an engine supplier, you know, I don't know what the hell's going on with Stoffel Van Dorn, but I think they misread the situation with him just hugely. What on earth is going on with that team? I have no idea. I don't know why Eric Bouyer is still there. Maybe he makes really good tea. That's the only thing I can conclude. Because, you know, and genuinely, I'm not just, you know, saying that for a giggle or anything. I have no idea what he brings to that team anymore. Just none. He was surly and aggressive all the way through the Honda era. He's been a lot more vocal since.
McLaren reminds me of the 1994 to 1996 McLaren, with the addition of commercial ineptitude.
Yes. No, exactly. You're spot on. Because was it 93 that they had Peugeot engines for a year for no conceivable reason, and the engines
94.
just used to explode?
Yeah.
94, yeah.
Yeah, with Martin Brundle detonating on the British Grand Prix grid. Yes, remember that well.
And like Mika Hakkinen binning it spectacularly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is, except that I don't think they can recover from it as quickly as they recovered from that period. And again, I say recover, I mean, they've been stagnant for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Which is a scary thought.
And I don't think they can trade, like Williams can't now. You can't trade on the past anymore. It's such a unforgiving sport. Like the amount of times Sky F1.
Driver situation matches one ultra talented driver and a pack filler. Harsh to Brundle may be faced with stuck out tongue.
We did that now in a minute. Yeah. What was I going to say? But there's like constantly a sleeping giants of F1. When are they going to wake up? They aren't, I think, is what we need to start getting across. And they are no longer... Can we consider Williams a giant anymore? I don't think we can. I think McLaren are clinging on by the skin of their teeth, but they start losing their giant status as soon as they took the Renault engines, in my opinion.
Yeah, as soon as they were no longer a works team, you can no longer call yourself a giant. I think they kind of hold on to it a little bit because they're so hugely, ridiculously wealthy, although that won't last long the way things are going.
No.
I still stand by what I said a podcast or two ago, that I think if they can make a go of it in IndyCar, they may even leave Formula One.
The only team capable of being a sleeping giant really is Ferrari, because no matter how bad they do, they'll throw as much money as it take.
Yeah, Ferrari are an interesting example, actually. I agree with you completely. And the reason I find Ferrari so interesting is because they're like, F1 is both integral and completely inconsequential to their business. It's a really bizarre relationship. Like they seem to draw all the benefit of being in Formula One, but none of the detriment. You know, like they can spend a decade not winning, and it has literally no effect on their car sales.
Yeah. And I
the money
wonder,
just keeps coming in.
I wonder what their definition of success versus a bad year in terms of business terms would be for them, because it's an interesting point you make there, David, in the chat, because it's the last time they won a Constructors' Championship was 2008, I think.
But not being in F1 would have an effect on their car sales.
I'd agree, but I wonder, like, is second really terrible for them or not in terms of constructors, when we know that they always push for one driver to win the Drivers' Championship, which I appreciate they've done for even a year longer than that. Is does coming second in that kind of still be a success, and does that then make you a sleeping giant because you've not won because you have like a zillion, million, trillion pounds? I don't know.
I mean, there's a lot that's an enigma about these classic teams now. Ferrari, I think, are pretty untouchable just because I think as a brand, as an entity, it's grown so large, and its reputation is drawn from so many things outside of F1 as well as Formula One, that they're essentially untouchable, really. Even if they were... I think, actually, I should pick my words carefully here, because I think if they'd slumped like McLaren slumped, then maybe they'd have a bit more problems.
Ferrari is a sleeping giant. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Ferrari is the only team with the potential to be a sleeping giant.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've got the shoulders broad enough and the reputation strong enough.
Or withdraw over a 5 to 10 year slump.
Rain.
Ferrari, people wonder. McLaren's in a difficult position because really, they're using hypercars these days, which I think is a distraction they didn't need. They are fairly new to that space still. I mean, they made the McLaren F1 back in like '95 or whenever it was. That car aside, which was really a Mercedes-driven project anyway, I believe. That aside, they're fairly new to the hypercar space, and I don't think they've got the broad shoulders that Ferrari have in that space. They're still first and foremost in the minds of Formula One fans and motorsport enthusiasts. So for them, I think F1 is, or motorsport in general, let's say, is much more integral to their business than it is with Ferrari. But also they have this. I think they have this real problem now that by not just no longer being a works team, but by being a Renault customer, I somehow, and I don't know for sure, so please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but like the new McLaren supercars, the baby one and the larger one that have come out, end of last year, start of this year, I'm going to say I'm 99% sure neither of them are Renault powered. And that tells you everything you need to know, I think. It's just such a... It was always going to be a bad idea.
McLaren. Get it with McLaren orange seat belts.
I mean, I know Williams did quite well out of a tie-up with Renault, but, they were a de facto works team. I just don't know, really. I just don't know what to expect from a team that just seems completely and utterly lost. And then they're entering this car manufacturing space. They're entering IndyCar. They're talking about making a return to endurance racing. I just... They're all the buttons. Pressing all the buttons.
Williams and Renault back then making money with cars was easy compared to now.
What tyres have just been put on my car?
So it told me that I was going to be put on dries again, so I purposely didn't pit because I couldn't get down to switch to wets. But I'm going round again, and this is hell. So I'm going to end up...
It's put me on dries.
Ah, stupid guy.
That's why I talked a load of bullshit for a few minutes, by the way, because I was trying to keep talking and figure out what was going on with my...
their own status in F1, so they are looking to broaden to somewhere where they might achieve that S.
Hello, Fabio Games, and all of that. Thank you for joining the chat as well. Welcome your opinions on that. I think it's interesting as well because if Alonso says that Weck is his priority because he's doing well, and we've got this whole, is McLaren going to go to is looking at IndyCar. If you was Alonso, where would you go if McLaren said we can give you a full year in IndyCar next year, but Weck said we'd like to keep you around? If he wins, I guess, this year, the Weck season, I don't think they cross over with like next year's IndyCar off the top of my head. would you kind of go, right, I'll win everything in LMP1 this year and then dive to IndyCar next year and I'll have all of the crowns?
If I am Alonso and I win Le Mans this year, I do IndyCar next year with the sole focus on Indy 500.
I really don't know. I think what we might see is him actually go full time at Toyota, and maybe go back to McLaren. I don't get the impression that he wants to drive IndyCar full time. He just wants a Triple Crown.
Yeah.
And even then, you know, he could go to, well, not any team, but almost any team, I think, in IndyCar. It's not like he hasn't got the money to sponsor himself. He's sponsoring McLaren this year. With his Kamoa brand. I don't even know what they do.
Flip-flops.
That's how much money he's got. That's how much money he's got. I don't know what he does, but... Oh... Game, why did you put me on dry tyres? Now I'm going to be like proper last forever. And ever and ever.
I lost 6 positions.
brand.
Such a shame.
No, but I'm already last. Now it's again. Boo. Right, okay, back on track. I think, to be honest, they shouldn't even be thinking about Alonso anyway.
No, he's too old.
It's, first of all, and people are going to hate me for this, if that means bumping Alonso because, you know, Stoffel's got a multi-year deal, fine, but I don't think Stoffel actually does, to be honest. But they need to get Lando in that car because he's already had an offer from Toro Rosso, which made me laugh somewhat, actually. Because that shows you what a mess Red Bull's got their driver development program into, but that's a story for another day. I think the problem they're going to really have is even when they get Lando into a McLaren in Formula One, keeping him there.
Yeah.
I think it would be very Lando Norris, and I'm sure he's listening to the show, to go into McLaren and sign a 3-4 year deal. That would, to me, that would just be insane. A talent like him, fine, you know, agree to go in for a year and then see where the team goes, because there are other teams that will want him, and if he really wants to build his career, he can't to a ship that I'm still convinced is sinking.
I agree, because he needs to do.
Get rid of Van Dorn for Norris.
He needs to.
He has enough time now to show that he won't reach Alonso's speed for years to come.
I've been very disappointed
Get
with
Lando
Van
next,
Dorn.
Alonso for a year. Get a benchmark on what Lando can actually do.
I would be. Oh Christ, that's not the track, Simon. Come back. I am really unimpressed with Van Dorn this year after the first couple of rounds, and I've been a he'll come good eventually kind of guy. He's starting to turn into Heikki Kovalainen for me, where there's a raw talent in there somewhere, but we're still not quite sure where it will tease out. But for me, I don't know. You can't continue to build a team around Alonso who's not going to be there. So he needs to go. I would put Lando in against Van Dorn for a third year at the moment. If someone like George Russell or Nick Rowland or someone like that is not going to be available for them. But Van Dorn is a couple of tenths to half a second maybe off of Alonso. So if Norris beats him, then you know that Norris is worthwhile keeping around. And I completely agree with you, Ben, that Norris needs...
Van Dorn wouldn't if he were in a Merc this year.
Norris needs to be very careful on having contracts with options to stay. Because you're right, he doesn't want to be tied down. And I just no. Because I don't see that team in recovery anytime soon whilst they continue their weird blame culture.
Yeah, I stand by what I said in the last episode, really, that they need to flip the table. The same way Williams did. And I know people might be thinking, well, look how well that's gone for Williams. And it's like, well, do you know what, that baffles a lot of people, actually. I was watching Sky's coverage of the last Grand Prix, and Martin Brundle was saying that he and Gary Anderson are both in agreement. That Williams car, he says, looks fantastic. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's something. Words. It's something of a mystery to some of the sort of technical commentators who look at the car and say it's very well designed. It looks great. There's something about it that's stopping it working. So it's almost like they've done what they needed to do and done it reasonably competently, but it just doesn't work. And, that happens sometimes in Formula One. It could be, maybe their wind tunnel numbers are off or whatever, but it's interesting to have a car that's really bad, and the people who normally tell you why it's bad look at it and say, I can't see really what they've done wrong. But I've derailed myself. McLaren need to do the same thing. They need to get rid of Bouillet. I'm starting to lose patience with Zach Brown, to be honest, because I think he's more interested with being popular than he is with running the team properly. And that's a typical marketing guy. And I don't think having a marketing guy has done Ferrari any favours, really. I know they've got a great car this year, and they've been on the up and up, but I don't lay that squarely. I really don't think having a marketing man as team principal is the way to go. I think you need an engineering mind.
We have difference of opinions. I quite like Zach Brown. I think he's.
But that's the problem. You like him. He's popular, but
I think he's a bit American centric, though. And I guess what I want to see from him and from our little Ferrari friend, who you just know is the kind of person who you would see in a brothel on a Sunday night, really.
Yes. Is 8 p.m. Sunday brothel, yes.
Yeah, before going home to wife and kiddies. But it's okay, because we're Italians. Sorry, all of the nation of Italy. But, what I don't see, and I guess it's very hard to see from the outside looking in, is how they deal with succession planning, because everything always hinges around one or two key appointments. And, like, Williams are firing people like I've chuck out vegetables from my fridge on a daily basis, with all the good intentions of the world. But what I don't get to see is this is how we breed talent within our organisation. This is our succession plan to go up, and that's where Red Bull have failed, because they spent all of their time going, Newey, we love you, and then when it was time for Newey to step back and go and play with other things, there was no one there that could hold a candle to him, so he had to come back. And so for me, this is about understanding where a team's DNA is going forward in the future, and how you can try and future-proof things as best as you can.
Cyber had for a long time succession issue.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, they did. Was it Jörg Zander was the head of Aero there for like a million years? But Sauber have always had a problem recruiting, actually, because of their location.
Yeah.
I remember Peter Sauber giving an interview when he brought the team back in 2010. He said, and they asked him, what's your biggest challenge? And he said, well, it's actually not really the budget. The biggest challenge we have is that we are isolated from all the other F1 teams, and no one wants to move to Switzerland to work for us. Mm-hmm. He said, like, either they live in Switzerland already for tax reasons, but we don't pay enough, or they don't want to move to Switzerland. Because, most engineers, they bounce up and down Motorsport Valley, don't they, in Oxfordshire?
Yeah.
They waltz out of Mercedes and into Williams, and then maybe they pop across to Renault, and maybe then they'll waltz out to Red Bull, and, it's a bit less Anglo-centric than it was in, say, the 90s, when, but you've still got most of the grid is based in a very small geographic area in the UK. And so attracting talent outside that's why that's why in the end Haas didn't go full American, right? They have that operations base in Banbury, where Manor used to be, because they realised F1 will not come to the United States.
No, which is interesting, because in a normal business, quote unquote, you would sit and look at where all your competitors are and go, right, well, that's that corner of the market sorted. Let's go and make a business over here. But it just doesn't seem to have worked in Formula One and motorsport in general.
Well, no, because I mean you've got all the feeder suppliers as well, right? You know, all the partners who make stuff for the gearboxes, you know, all the fabricators, the electronics, and so on. It's all concentrated in a small area, so you don't just have that pool of talent from, but you save a fortune on, you know, buying ancillary parts and homologated stuff, right? 'Cause it's all made down the road.
Feeder supplies, logistics that teams can combine.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting points there. Whilst we talk about feeder series, because it's just popped into my head.
Facilities there. Why build new ones when you can buy the ones from Manor?
Yeah. What I was going to say was, in a lot of feeder series, and this is my segue into one of the crazier rumours that I've heard in the last week, is a tyre supplier called Hankook, who deal with lots and lots and lots of tyres for the very, 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 very junior open wheel series, who have expressed an interest to become a Formula One tyre supplier. How do you feel about having a second tyre supplier back in the sport? Do you miss tyre wars? Is that something that interests you, or would you rather just have one tyre supplier? And do you think Pirelli are doing a good enough job to continue to be it should they want to be?
I used to want tyre wars back.
I miss tyre wars personally.
I imagine whoever made that comment, you and I are probably on the same page largely. I used to want them back. I used to want them back because for me it was an interesting variable. The reason I've changed my tune on it now, we have people in charge now who can't even wait till the next formula change to make a formula change, and without a control tyre at least, I think we could end up with a very disparate grid.
Yeah.
To the point where it's not even worth watching. And you know, for me, and I know a lot of people will disagree with this, but I think Pirelli done, aside from I think they've done a fantastic job, just superb, since they got into the sport. They've been batted over the head quite a lot because people were like, oh, these tyres don't last, but that was the mandate. When they entered the sport, they were told, we want you to make comedy clown tyres that fall apart, because everyone was bored by Bridgestones that could go on at the start of the weekend and still be on at the end of the race.
Yeah.
I mean, Pirelli have said, you know, if people want to do one tyre races, we're more than capable of making tyres that are fast for the entire Grand Prix. But it doesn't help the racing.
Doing a great job, but I also think competition generally improves the sport.
I completely agree. And if we had a more stable hand at the tiller in terms of the formula, I'd be all for tyre wars. I mean, part of me yearns for a return to, you know, 80s and 90s Formula One, where fuel suppliers and tyre suppliers and everybody were all, you know, fighting hard against each other for these microscopic gains, but it's not anymore.
I think there's a couple of things. I am also of the mind that I think Pirelli have done a fantastic job working to the mandate that they're given. And I think that is the key there, is what they were given and what they were told to do. They have very little control over what they are able to kind of work within, and they are very adaptive as well. So if something isn't working, you've seen how they've brought out different tyre compounds and new things for the next race and that kind of stuff. So that's always worked really, really well, I think, in Pirelli's favour. I also agree that competition does bring out the best in some things, but my worry is also with tyres is you're quite right. We are so reactionary. It will be we need to do A, we need to do B, we need to do C. Or someone moaned in the fan forum voice survey, therefore we now need to have 4 tyre compounds per race and all of that kind of stuff. And at the moment, I think tyres being stable is a good thing for the sport, especially when we're changing aero for next year, where we aren't going to be sure whether those aero changes work. So I wouldn't want another change on top, because you need to be able to test that this aero package is better for overtaking before anything like that comes in.
I'm actually really scared about those aero changes. I don't believe they're going to be positive.
Well, just before we went live, actually, Formula One posted a video which I was quickly watching, and it's on their YouTube channel, and something completely passed me by is that the rear wing is going to be massively chunky, and they're raising the gap that the DRS actually works, so it's going to be 20 to 30% more effective than it is now, and I think it's already overly effective now, and that kind of cheapens the whole what is an overtake worth if it's too easy.
But this is what I'm ranting about in the last podcast, right? Because all you'll get out of those fan surveys is, well, what more take? And then they'll come up, and this is what I wrote in my lengthy email to them. I was like, if you just go chasing overtakes all the time, people will still switch off. These people are not interested. They're just noisemakers, and I don't like to exclude anybody. I think it's important to get all different kinds of opinions in the sport and to try and make it, without ruining the DNA of the sport, make it appealing to whoever you want. But there is a subsection of people who will tell you their opinion, who have no interest in actually watching the sport.
Yeah.
We should not think about DRS.
And you look at the articles I've been sharing on Twitter this week. People I respect actually saying, "Oh, we need to get rid of Monaco," and you look at the comments underneath, and everyone's a freaking expert. Everyone's saying, "Well, it's the aero, or you need downforce to be taken from the underside of the car, or we need even wider tyres, or everyone's got their own idea of what's necessary, right?" And I know it's rich coming from me, a guy who for almost a decade has been shouting his opinions about Formula One into a microphone, but if you actually listen to what I say most of the time, usually all I'm saying is let's not go mental.
Yeah.
I trust Ross Brawn to make the right calls. Let's not just make them overnight and just flick a switch. That's usually all I ever say. I'd never say, well, we need to move to bigger rear wings or anything, because I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I just know that making a radical change out of nowhere has never ever the racing.
They tend to say two things: more mechanical grip, narrower cars.
See, now I would listen to drivers, but I'd also not at the same time, and it's because what makes something good to drive is not necessarily what would always conduce to great racing, because they will be after, we want more grip or stuff like that, or we want a challenge, but then that challenge changes depending on what formula you're into. So I would listen to drivers' input, but I wouldn't go fully on that. Same as I'm quite of the same opinion of you, Ben, where it's around we're agreeing a lot this episode.
Says something, fair enough. If 3 out of 4 drivers agree on the same thing, might want to open your ears.
Yeah, maybe, but I would want a technical investigation based on evidence, rather, so that it's an evidence-based approach, rather than having lots and lots of people chipping in, and then having that being an independent research, or as independent as possible. And that's why I quite like the way how Rossborn's gone about it, is that it is independently done. You don't have people who are already like it's not being headed by Ferrari or Mercedes or Red Bull, so therefore you can't have that as much of a sway into that would suit up our technical structure really well, and because it's so difficult to not muddy the water. So the more independent but the most evidence-based approach is the one that I would go for personally, as someone who works in having to deal with data science quite a lot.
I have to say, I think maybe I didn't really word my position very well, so I should clarify some elements of that. I mean, first of all, I agree with you, like, independent as possible is the way to go, but drivers and occasionally the fans will align on certain on certain suggestions, right? But the thing is, the drivers will be advocating for stuff that they feel they can use to their advantage. So, I mean, they're racers at heart, right? They want to be able to push all the time.
Yep.
And there's a lot of fans who, you know, say, well, I miss the days when drivers could push all the time, right? But that's a very rose-tinted nostalgia.
Agreed
If you
with you, Simon,
look at the
on the
day,
investigation and evidence part. Definitely, independent is difficult in F1 because it's so niche and high-tech.
exactly, it is a very niche industry, actually. Everyone knows each other well and so on. But the point I was going to make was that you don't necessarily, I think people forget very easily problems that they were shouting about previously. So when people say, you know, well, mechanical grip and better tyres and everything, and less fuel restrictions, that will bring better racing. Well, I beg to differ, and so does history.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember how dull the Schumacher era was, like the start of the Schumacher era, where there was, yeah, you had to stop for tyres and you made refuel stops, but it was highly competitive and whatever. Also, you know, McLaren's domination, McLaren Honda at the end of the 80s. If that was going on today, Twitter would be abuzz with people saying, well, Formula One's boring, it's just processional. And that was a period of time where you could push all the time that you wanted.
Exactly. And I think we history and rose-tinted glasses is a really interesting perspective, because all we do is talk about Prost versus Senna. Well, there was actually about another 30 other cars on the grid. We don't get to see those. We forget that there was 12 seconds between first and 26th on the grid because you had the Palmer trophy and all of that kind of stuff. I think we're a bit spoiled by the fact that at Monaco we had first to like 15th covered by 1.1 seconds.
F1, do we want the driver's skill to shine through? Engineering brilliance, a mix of it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, I think that might have cut out from my microphone as that was going through. And that's what I know I've banged on about it so much, but F1 needs to decide what it wants to be, and it can't decide what it wants to be by constantly asking the fans for approval. It needs to stick itself in the sand and say, this is how we're going to work. And come along for the ride, essentially. And that is where in that triangle of driver's influence, team support and technical ingenuity does that triangle want to be? Because Formula E has gone down aero doesn't matter to us. We've had rear wings fall off the back in the last race in Zurich, and the driver was going around in the same lap time as before because aero doesn't matter.
This is who we are. Come aboard if you like it. Hop off the train if you don't like it.
Exactly, because there's plenty of other series out there that can cater for people who don't want an aero-based race, and are happy with.
And that's the problem. I mean, let's be honest as well. Really, they're chasing IndyCar fans. That's who they're chasing, right? They want an extra.
Ooh,
don't really want
cut
much of it,
completely
but
out there, mate. Oh, there you go, you're back.
that's very odd. I hope that doesn't happen again. Yeah, I mean, I really think they're chasing the. They're going to be very overlap between them, even though the cars look quite similar. Because of the in the car, some of it is artificially generated. Some
They
of
are
it is.
chasing every kind of fan. If they were chasing IndyCar fans, fair enough, but they are chasing non-motorsport fans.
Also true. Also true. They are trying to be diverted, which you could argue is kind of the job. They're a group of people who will never be interested, and you can make the races as short and sprinty as you like. You can have half-time fireworks shows. You know, you can paragliding Gloria Gaynor and dressed as a bearded man.
Can we?
It's not going to make any difference because some people just don't like motorsport.
Exactly, and for me,
what
there's.
Is that... Sorry, go on.
I know. I was going to say.
Yes, reach out to them.
Everyone's
sure,
talking.
But
Hang
don't
on.
make them the main influence in your
Yeah.
decision-making process.
took the words right out of my chops there, David. Don't make them the main influence. You need to. It's like the new customers that you get for broadband and TV packages. Don't forget that you need to look after your current customers, because we'll just become new customers elsewhere. But we don't then have the brand loyalty, if that makes sense, because then we'll be enticed by the next exciting thing when IndyCar goes, oh look, by the way, we're going to have musical rear wings. Everyone's like, ooh, off we go, because we're chasing the next new thing, and we don't stay because we aren't loyal, because we don't understand the history and the backlog, and we aren't interested because we are just superficial. And I think what's really interesting with IndyCar is when you pitch IndyCar up against NASCAR is shrinking year on year in terms of its output and population, whereas IndyCar is seeing record levels of attendance for the first time in like 10 to 15 years at different tracks. And what have they done? They've actually kind of gone back to a bit more of a racier approach of looking and feeling and being fast, which is kind of what we went to for 2017 a little bit. But ultimately, there are still teams and differences in what people do. Maybe not as much as Formula One, but they haven't gone radical in a let's bring in a staged formula NASCAR. And you can sit there and you can almost pitch out that Formula One has got like this crossroad of how are you going to mess up your sport? Are you going to cement the things that people love and that's why they come for, and ask for that brand loyalty and get people to go for it? Or are you going to chase the next gimmick like NASCAR has, where now everyone's really disillusioned with what NASCAR actually is and standing for, because they just don't get it anymore?
It is a real conundrum, because I think F1, perhaps more than a sport actually, comes with such a heritage it's hard to break away from, that being charitable to them, it is kind of hard for them to innovate, because there's people like me who know Formula One, like Formula One, and don't want you to mess with the sport that I love. And I think really the core problem is that I hate to hear myself say this, because I think Liberty have done a lot of good. They've done a lot right, so I don't want to actually bash them too hard, but I almost feel as if they shouldn't have totally got rid of Bernie. I appreciate they really had no choice, and he made it very difficult for them. But the reason I'm saying that is, the one thing Bernie did know was to not completely alienate the existing fans, and I think Liberty are aware of it in a very nebulous sense, but their business strategy is going to be hinged on growth.
The problem is that Liberty is an American company, and in some aspects they disregard the tradition and history behind TH.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some of that, although they are making an effort to be somewhat aware of it, but
it's the American influence, isn't it?
They're hinged on growth, rather than seeing it as an investment that sort of pays out over time from an existing fan base that you kind of maintain.
Yep.
They want to in something bigger than they bought, and then maybe sell it on, or continually push profits, which, fair play, right? That normally, whether it's your phone or your TV or whatever, that attitude normally delivers very cool things. But I think a sport is it's very hard to have that mindset and mix sport, entertaining sport, and a sporting, right? Look at professional wrestling. Once upon a time that was considered legitimate sport, and it had turned into a carnival sideshow where everything was scripted to get the commercial success that it had in, say, the late 90s, early 2000s. But that would have killed off its core fan base.
Yeah.
But Formula One doesn't have the same ability to tell stories and build character reputations or whatever to get sort of a reality TV mass market appeal.
No.
And so I don't think their strategy is going to pay dividends the way it has in some other sports. Instead, you're just going to be left with the negative side of a strategy like that, which is, pushing away the people that quite like what you do. And if I were them, I'd be very, very wary about Formula E. Because, Formula One will always have my heart and everything, but I have to say, even though Formula E is very different to Formula One, I find it incredibly watchable. and I think they do a hell of a lot right. And some people might be surprised by that because it's essentially a single make formula, which historically everyone knows I detest. But it's starting to move away from that, and it's kind of
Formula is becoming a little juggernaut that starts rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I really think it's going to go from strength to strength. I think the Gen 2 car has done everything right.
Yeah.
Everything. And they have a grid that is more packed with people based on talent than money, because the sport has managed to keep costs under control up until now. And the fact that you've got you've got an increase in manufacturer participation alongside some independent teams that are able to compete. The actual experience of attending is very pleasant. It's very easy to get to because it's not traditional motorsport. It's not polluting. So
The Gen 2 car, the fact that they got Audi and Porsche to commit to it instead of LMP1, the locations.
yeah,
This is
and
getting big fast.
Renault becomes Nissan next season. Mercedes are entering. Ferrari is still in negotiations to enter. BMW have entered. Who else is entering? There was someone else. Jaguar are already in. Citroen DS are already in. I think the way is generally very respectful. The races are very easy to get to. They're in the city centre. It's very family friendly. I think F1 could do well to try and adopt what was realistically adoptable. I'm not talking in terms of the formula because I was comparing apples and oranges, but they must realise that maybe if they could move a little bit on what they charge venues to host races and maybe get the ticket prices down a little bit, then maybe they get a few more tickets through the door and maybe the volume in sales makes up the shortfall and more. I really think you can make more money by getting more people through the door cheaply than you can by scalping them for tickets before they've even arrived.
Yeah. And I think there was one of the latest fan surveys or F1 Voices. If you're not on that website, I do strongly suggest it because it gives you an insight into the kinds of things that they're round tabling at the moment.
But that is difficult for F1. Look at their track requirements. Expensive as hell to comply.
Yeah, agreed. Which is why I think on the latest F1 Voice that they were talking about was basically what else would bring you along to a Formula One venue event. Because it was funny actually. It was I can't remember if it was last race. It must have been Canada actually, which we've not even touched on and discussed because there's so many big meaty topics to go on, and that race was quite dull.
I've still got a few more to wheel out as well, but we will talk about the race.
Yeah.
We've still got half the Grand Prix, so
yeah, we have at Crest. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, so this latest fan voice was all about what else would bring you to a race, and Martin Brundle was saying, I'm really confused.
Girls put them in a tough spot again, grinning face.
But Martin Brundle was going, it always confuses me why there are people wandering around in the paddock and looking at the concert that's going on during the race. And actually, I think that that's a really interesting point because you could legitimately have a really good F1 weekend event without really seeing the F1. And what else could you bring along to make it much more of an open, accessible carnival event that also has F1 racing as part of it, which can then open stuff up? And I'm not talking about let's pay millions of pounds to get Beyonce in for the American Grand Prix and stuff like that. We've seen moves towards this with the F1 fan zones and stuff like that, but there's quite a lot of things that you could add on and make it part of almost like a travelling circus of other things that come with it, and that would interest me quite a lot because at the moment with its current prices I was very fortunate that I could go to a Grand Prix, but I wouldn't, as much as I loved it and enjoyed it, I wouldn't pay full price to go for a weekend on myself again.
No, there's very few Grand Prix that I would attend. I think Austria is really the only one that I find sort of the pricing is reasonable if you don't want to go there and hire a car, because you can stay in the town.
And I wonder how much
border of the circuit.
I wonder how much of that is subsidised by the fact that it's the Red Bull
I was going to
circuit.
say it's also subsidised a little by Red Bull. And I keep saying I want to go to the Austrian Grand Prix, but nobody will go with me because I'm a Billy No Mate. But I kind of agree with what you're saying. At the same time, I always found it a little odd or disinteresting for me that when they say stuff like, "Oh, come to Formula One, see Craig David live," and I'm like, I think the people who are interested in watching Formula One cars drive around in all these sessions, and the people who like Craig David, like if you drew a Venn diagram.
Basically next door to me.
There you go, David will go with you.
Oh, perfect. Oh, maybe we can get a Failcast crew to go together.
Failcast meet. Yes.
I think that's a brilliant idea. But the people who are interested in Formula One and people who are interested in Craig David, you draw that Venn diagram, there's probably very little overlap.
Exactly. It needs to be relevant to what's going on. Unless they're targeting families, maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, unless they're targeting families or they're trying to get, maybe there's guys who've been married 20 years and stuff who can't go unless their wife goes with them, and they need something, more mainstream for to feel comfortable forking out the money, whether that's music concerts or, a trackside cinema or, something else going on for the money. Mm-hmm. Because you know how it is, if someone doesn't get your interest or your hobby, then everything to do with it they see is a waste of money. We've all been round to someone's house, right, and insist on playing music to you, and then they tell you their speaker system costs £12,000, or you a maniac. I'm in a murderer's house. And I imagine there's people who don't have Formula One fans, so I'm going to have to hold my hands up and say I just don't know enough on this.
The increasing quality of the media coverage make it easy for me to stay home, too. I don't think they could really add.
That's another point, actually. I especially when we're looking at F1 TV and things like that, I would then consider that I've already spent my allocated money on Formula One if I had then paid for my F1 TV media coverage. And that for me is the amount of, as much as I love the sport, I buy the game, I may have a little bit of merchandise here or there, but if I'm going to actually pay to watch the thing, then that's me pledging my allegiance to the sport. Do not expect me to then pay an absolute fortune to go and see the thing live when I'm paying to watch the amazing coverage that I can get at home.
Well, also, it's just because it's impossible to do a Grand Prix cheaply.
Yeah.
It's just impossible. You spend, for at least £500,000.
Yeah.
At least £500,000. Like, you shouldn't have to... Yeah. You shouldn't have to spend, 500, 600 euros to attend a Grand Prix. That's mental.
Yeah.
That's insane.
That's 2 weeks in Magaluf, or something like that, isn't it?
The only comparable thing I can think of is a few years ago I was going to go back to the and I'm from a Scottish family, which is why I drive with the Scottish flag in the game and so on. And I thought, what would be nice? Why don't I get tickets? We'll go see Scotland play. And they were playing Belgium in a friendly, not a friendly. Sorry, it was a qualifier. It was actually a qualifier. Or maybe it was a friendly. I forget. Point is, we were going to right, and the Scottish team is largely fat and full. It's fun to spot. And I looked at ticket prices, and for us to have and attend the event, it was something like 140 quid each. And I think that's more than £1 a minute to watch your team lose in the rain. It's a hard sell. It's a really hard sell. And it's not just football.
Oh, sorry.
Maybe
that whole sentence dropped out. Could you say that again? Sorry, mate.
Sure. But, music prices as well, right? I'm a huge fan of the Pixies, and they were playing an open air concert in Berlin maybe two.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to go. And then I checked the ticket prices, 90 quid.
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, no, you can fuck.
Yeah.
I think as we're moving into an era where you've got entertainment on demand and you've got virtual reality as well.
Yeah.
At least 1 hour entertainment per dollar spent grinning face.
I mean, if you think about it, I don't, for the life of me, know why companies aren't selling virtual tickets. Right? Imagine you're sat at home, you've got your HTC Vive or PlayStation VR or whatever, and around the racetrack or the concert hall or whatever, there are 360-degree cameras, and you log in. You can watch the event you can hop between seats as you want, and when you turn your head in the crowd, it's like you're there, but you're at home on your sofa eating a pizza. This is the future that they're going to have to compete with, and I'm sorry, but just being there is not enough to justify ticket prices, and particularly for something like Formula One, where if you are new to the sport, you're completely baffled as to why you've spent the best part of 1,000 quid. No, but it will be.
Presidential debate between Trump and Hillary. It was a mess.
Well, that's probably speaking more about Trump and Hillary than anything else, to be honest. But I guess that is actually a really good point. But on the whole, being there is not enough, because actually being there could be having a couple of mates round and splitting the cost of entry to those tickets and camera each, isn't it? So there's so much that you could wiggle out from that. And my musical interests are usually, apart from perhaps, I think Bjork's the person that I paid the most money to go and see, and that was 60. But she came with an Icelandic choir, and who's our English lifestyle nature man that narrates everything? David Hasselhoff. Yes, not David Hasselhoff. That's what I had in my head. I was like, I would pay to see David Hasselhoff narrate a documentary. Here comes Pam's boobies over the hill. Look at those jiggles. Anyway, alternate world. But so a lot of my concerts that I actually see, I don't leave the house. They're live streamed, and so I watch them from the comfort of my living room sofa, complete with a beer. And they pop a camera in the back, and it's lovely. And you get it live streamed, and that's from people like who are American based that can't afford to have a European tour, so they open up to the European fans that they've got. And yeah, for me, being there isn't worthy of that kind of cost, and Formula One makes it worse for being there because you only see part of the action. So
that's the point I was going to make. That's exactly the point I was going to make. You don't get to see the whole event. You actually lose out a little bit by being there.
I think so, because I remember at Silverstone, it was really difficult to explain to the person I'd gone with, because that was their first F1 race, and they didn't understand like where the track was going, and the radios didn't work, and then you'd have to pay for that, and then the timing stand was broken, so then you couldn't really see what was going on. And it was carnage. And so afterwards, when we came home, I was then like, do you want to watch the race on TV so we can actually find out what really happened? So it was a bit awkward. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, moving on down my topic list. Can we talk very briefly about the rich energy takeover of Force India that's never going to happen? Because that's been back in the news again. I don't know if you guys had seen, but the owner of Rich Energy, who's Beard, put out a statement that I'm going to read in a dismissive and condescending voice. We made an offer and it's been accepted on principle. And now we just have a buy, purchase, sales order to process, and then things are complete. I don't know why they haven't announced it. I can tell you why they haven't announced it. It's because you're talking out of your arse, mate. Bob Fernley said, well, yeah, do you know what? They've said they want to buy the team, but so have a lot of other people. And, you know, we went through this last time they were talking like this. I'm sure we feel the exact same way now. The reason I bring it up now, because really it's a non-story and they don't deserve any airtime whatsoever for this nonsense. But the reason it's interesting to me is because it turns out that one of the interested parties who's in negotiations to potentially buy the team is Mercedes.
Ooh.
And that sort of caught my attention. I was thinking, what?
Why? A junior
Well,
team?
I guess because they've realised that the teams they supply have fallen down the competitive order, and maybe it's all the trouble they've had getting Pascal Wehrlein in somewhere. I don't know, but I guess they want more control over their driver development.
Interesting.
And, you know, Force India and Williams have both maintained sort of a stubborn independence, haven't they?
Yeah.
Ferrari have Sauber very much in their orbit once again. Plus, you know, they've got some leverage at Haas, but, you know, to be fair, Haas are quite stubborn as well. Mm-hmm. And then Red Bull have Toro Rosso. So I guess they feel the need to grab a team, and I don't know. It struck me as at least worthy of having a conversation. I don't know what they call it. Probably something ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, like EQ plus formula or something like that, because they keep adding names onto their own name. Or maybe, you know, they'll have a Mercedes and an AMG team. Like that. I really don't know, but
Force blessed.
that struck me as very interesting.
Yeah.
And the only reason, you know, this stuff's getting traction is because he's now as chairman, but he's still the majority shareholder. I think he's going to sell the team.
Interesting.
No.
Was it Mercedes or Wolf?
No, it was Mercedes. It was actually Mercedes itself. So, yeah, very odd, but apparently there are multiple parties who are interested.
Well, yeah, because especially as they had a dodgy start this year, they've kind of re-cemented themselves back in the top end of the midfield again, which is nice to see. But you're right, they are the next best Merc team. Mercedes do have a driver development program. They don't seem to be able to put anyone anywhere, especially whilst they're keeping hold of Lewis and Bottas. So they need to look at that as well. And I guess if you've got teams that are all at the back of the grid, you're getting less. I'm assuming you're getting less worthwhile data through as a result. It just maybe from correlation. I don't know. That does interest me, and I guess if you've got Ferrari, you've got junior team, Red Bull have junior team. They're your kind of top three. Mercedes are very much on their own, as you were saying with the development. I'd be interested with that. Force India does seem the logical option if they were to do that. Now that Mana is gone, they should have bought Mana and done it earlier.
Yeah. No, I mean, the concept definitely interests me. I think there's potential in it. I'm always wary about manufacturers directly buying teams. Because if Mercedes leave, then suddenly we're not just down 2 cars, we're down 4.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it makes me a little tetchy, but I guess it kind of shows a level of commitment to Formula 1 in the future to be willing to make that. Because I wasn't sure what was going to happen if they fell off the top of the pyramid here, because, you know, their Formula E team next season, it kind of struck me that maybe they were going to do a Porsche. You know, we've done all we can here, it's time to move on. I really don't know. Now, you know, their investment is huge in Formula 1 if they did take that step.
Uh-huh. Is it also around if there's going to be a look at budget capping and stuff like that, they're going to need to chop lots and lots of staff, so why not have it spread over the operations of 2 so that it keeps the level of investment.
You retain the skills in your company, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, if Honda could start a Formula team just for driver, and, you know, I'm sure it's feasible that a company could start another, like, talent development and retention solution, but still, it kind of seems like an expensive solution for that problem.
It does.
And I kind of don't like the idea of Force India's future being tied inextricably to its engine suppliers. And again, we're in a situation where, at the end of last season, at least, Force India were the team most in position. Oh, I've got a stop-go penalty for ignoring blue flag. That wasn't ignoring the blue flag, he just didn't go past. My race is completely fucked. I got up to 10, and then I had to pit again, and it's just it's a mess. I'm also still 6, so I can't brain very well. Anyway,
doing well, mate. Doing well.
They were in a position where all they needed was a works engine supplier or something like that, and now if that deal happened to go through, and I'm not convinced that it will necessarily.
No.
Then it's another team on the grid that's not allowed to win, and I think we're having far too much of that.
Exactly, it pushes them into a hierarchy that they'll never be able to get out of. Same as Williams aren't allowed to win whilst they're with, well, they won't be winning anytime soon, but Toro Rosso won't be allowed to win. Haas and Sauber aren't allowed to win because of that. Frustrating. And it kind of sets up that is the DNA and that's how things will always be. And therefore, what could ever change? It doesn't matter how close the racing is. You'll have to sort yourself out at the end.
The more deals like this take shape, the more it entrenches the top 3 in their position.
Yeah,
and
that gap between them.
Maybe if it was still McLaren Honda, at least there's a ridiculously remote outside chance that you have a 4th challenger in the mix. But they sold out to Renault. Not going to happen now.
Yeah. And maybe Renault may come back and be that 4th team in their place potentially. But again, you're still got that 4-4-4 kind of thing, isn't it? Or 4-4-2.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I really don't.
Let's not forget that one of the top 3 teams is not a manufacturer, so there is still some hope.
There is, but it's how much dosh are they throwing at that though? That is unsustainable and is probably being propped up by God knows what else. Well, basically everyone's rotten teeth, isn't it? So,
yeah, I mean, I'll die at 55. In a heart attack because of it, because I buy a lot of Red Bull. No, I mean, you make an excellent point, to be honest. Red Bull are kind of like the anomaly in this, but I still think, over the course of 2 to 3 seasons, Renault will swap places with them. And particularly once that happens, and I don't think Red Bull will really get back above them as long as they're in that working relationship. Talking of Red Bull and Renault, I don't know if you saw, but while we were off air, some point last week, Renault seemed to be building bridges with Red Bull a little bit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they were saying, well, you need to make a decision on your engine soon, and we want to remind you that you won't win races with Honda. And I was thinking, why do you care about that? You have an awful relationship with Red Bull. Why do you suddenly want their business?
I suppose it helps underwrite their F1 team, maybe.
To get signs long term.
Ah, yeah, I never considered that. But actually, who else is running Renault Power?
McLaren.
It's McLaren. Yeah, I was gonna say I knew there was someone else. McLaren Renault still sounds wrong.
It does.
Like I form the words in my mouth, and I'm like, what am I talking about?
Do you have to have a lie down after?
It's like saying, Sauber Renault. It's like, what?
Oh, that would cause me to have a faint moment.
Now, shall we talk?
Puncture.
Yeah, that happened to me as well. Shall we talk about the Canadian Grand Prix?
Yeah, go on then.
I saw relatively little of it, I'll be honest, because I had a fever and I was a mess. I did, though, see the opening lap incident with Lance Stroll and Brendan Hartley. And I want to get your take on it, and I want to find out what happened as the race went on, because I'll be honest, I've completely missed any information after this.
You never want your rubber to be punctured.
I know.
Lol.
Had that problem before. Yeah, sorry. Opening incident. I think it was a 50-50, but the problem is that Stroll... I think there was some contact before that had happened, which maybe had caused Stroll to maybe have a puncture or just a wiggle wobble, that then caused the actual issue later on. I don't think... They kept on saying, oh, Brendan was pushing his luck being out there. No, he weren't. I don't think.
I kind of... I'll be honest with you, I'm prepared to lay this on Stroll, whether it's... I don't know if it's actually his fault, but when I looked back at it, I saw that what initially to me looked like a Hartley mistake, as you went back through the replay, became he was pinched to the wall by Stroll incident.
To get hurt, but Stroll's fault. Be aware that you have a car to your right.
But I think he was aware. I think he just got a wiggle on.
It looked to me like Stroll really did things. I think if Brendan hadn't have been there, people would be thinking, oh, he doesn't really have much appetite. Hartley can't do anything right now, to be honest, no matter what he does.
I feel like he's being... Not that he's being set up to fail, but it doesn't matter what he does, it's going to be now viewed in a negative light in press circles and people who maybe don't want to know any better, which is interesting because Gasly's had some awkward moments too, but they aren't really talked about. We just instead have to sit there and listen to the woe of Brendan Hartley and how the kid that managed to get his seat back is just being treated like absolute dirt. And I guess for me, it kind of makes me think, if I was a driver, would that be a driver development program that I would want to go for my own sanity, or would I actively try and pursue other driver programs instead?
The thing is, like, he's been reluctant to criticise Red Bull. I don't know if you've seen what he's been saying after the Lando Norris story broke, and he's like, well, I'm not going to comment on it, you know, it's just stuff in the news.
He's showing class to me.
I'd be absolutely livid. Yeah. And he's also, like, all the Toro Rosso media work, it's all him. If you look at their Facebook page, all the videos are him. Interviews with him, podcasts with him. In Monaco, he was taking me around his apartment. I don't know why the fucking hell that was going on. I blame Liberty for that, actually, because one of the questions on the fan survey that round was like, one of the things was, I don't feel I see enough of the drivers' personal lives. I don't give a fuck about the drivers' personal lives. No.
Do you want to see celebrities?
I get a feeling like they're gearing up some sort of Americanized reality TV show.
They're going to lock them all in a room, and then each lap someone gets voted off the circuit.
Yeah, or, you know, Gordon Ramsay turns up to criticise their time.
Really nice down to earth dude, apparently hugely important to development.
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing, is that if that...
Give him until the end of the season. If they do, he will come good.
I hope they do as well. I think he deserves to stay for the rest of the season. I don't think what he's done so far has shown him in his best light, but equally, there are other... Oh, I'm still braking where I think it's wet. It's dry now, Simon. Yeah, I think he needs to be given the time to grow and develop. He's clearly a class driver because of all of his antics elsewhere. I think he's handled himself with the press absolutely superbly, and would be an asset to other teams that maybe... I'm in my head, I'm thinking Williams, actually, to be fair.
Yeah, I was about to say the same thing, like Stroll out, Hartley in.
Yeah, because Sergei Sorokin impresses me with his technical ability and the way how he is handling himself.
If Rick Shardo leaves, Sainz goes to RB, would Renault consider him?
Ooh. I don't think they would.
No, me neither, actually. Which is kind of a shame, really, but... I could see Hartley in at Williams. I don't think it will happen because, as we always say, Williams have zero imagination when it comes to their driver picks. You know, they'll maybe get rid of Stroll, and then before you know it, Rubens Barrichello is putting his suit back on. Or they'll recall Bruno Senna inexplicably out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Or maybe Kazuki Nakajima's done enough now for Frank to love him. They just can't seem to break the cycle. I don't know what it is with them. But what was interesting was that Twitter was ablaze with all this. And I saw quite possibly the most ridiculous suggestion.
Oh, God.
Some complete gibbon was loudly advocating for Toro Rosso to take Robert Kubica. And I was so angry by this, I actually wrote him directly. I was like, what insane notion are you envisaging here? A team for young driver development, you're going to take a 36-year-old one-armed Polish man and stick him in out of nostalgia. That is mental. I'm sorry. It's the most ridiculous assertion I've ever heard. And he was like, yeah, but he'll bring more points. It's like, you have zero evidence of that. He's been tested and found lacking by 2 teams. One of those teams is at the back of the grid and still won't put him in a race seat. I'm sorry, like, he was a class act. He was the world champion we never got, as I always say, but we're still not going to get him.
No.
It's time to move on. It's time to move on.
No, and Formula One does not have the resource, time and abilities to have a nostalgia story. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. It's sport. Sport doesn't have a heart in that regard. So move on, nothing to see here. And what's really frustrating is that you know that is probably the same person who is socially medially, you know what I mean, engaged.
Yes.
Who will then go and vote some kind of shite on that fan voice. And that's what it's a call to arms, listeners and readers and watchers. We need to suit up and put on some actual, I don't know, not biased opinions, like informed opinions, based on longer term fans who, I sound like I'm rallying for Trump.
But here's the kicker. But here's the kicker. If I was Franz Toast, I'm not sure who I'd put in at Toro Rosso. I can see why they were sniffing Lando Norris, although, again, to me, that seems almost as ridiculous as taking Robert Kubica, simply because, first of all, McLaren are not going to let him go long term, so I don't know what he brings to you in the long run. I don't know what you get out of showcasing someone else's driver and then giving them up. All you're showing is that our drivers are so bad, or we're so impatient with them that we have to literally go anywhere else.
I would put in Artem Markelov.
You're a big Markelov man, aren't you?
Yeah.
Is he a Red Bull driver?
No. But he's not associated with anyone, and that's why. Yeah, because they David raised a really good point there in the chat. Is that it's in the pursuit of the next Verstappen, they've dropped so many good talents who have actually then come quite good later on. So there's a few drivers who are now not Red Bull related, who I think still should be. And the other issue that I've got is that quite a lot of the other driver developers are already in programs. So, George Russell is in at Force India, Norris is in under the McLaren banner. You've got Fukuzumi, who is under Honda, and all of that kind of stuff. So, actually, Nairo Fukuzumi.
Now you mention it, I remember reading an article saying that Honda want a Japanese driver in at Toro Rosso next year. So.
And he would be the best one by a long shot, because Matsushita was okay at GP2, but kind of peaked out there at getting some reverse grid wins and a couple of poles. But Fukuzumi is busy battling basically nose to tail with George Russell all the way through GP3, because there was a trio of them who were just head and shoulders above the rest of the field last year. they've all gone to Formula 2. Someone's going really slow in 17th. A Ferrari limping round. It's actually stopped.
That means you're about to lap me.
Ooh. Oh, I've just lost 2 positions in the corner as well.
I've had a shocking race, mate. Really, I've made about 6 pit stops. It's been awful.
Oh, dude. You're doing okay. Put it down to illness. We need you to do like a Mark Webber into stuff. But yeah, so Fukuzumi would be my Honda choice if I was to be Honda and to pressure one in, because I think he's ready and capable. And
training his pit crew, they'll be ready for F1 2018.
Possibly, as an extreme outside chance, Tadazuki Makino, but I think he's too young. I'd rather go for Fukuzumi for a Honda. But if I could get Markelov in, he's the best person out there who is not attached to any driver program, but he's been in GP2 for so many years, and is that why he's the Maldonado, but like a bit less crazy of GP2. But he just doesn't seem to be
That's
picked
not selling
up.
me on him, Simon.
Oh, no. So he's superb with tyres, and he knows that GP2 car so well and does really well with it. But he'll like start at the back of the grid and get up into a podium. But he can't qualify by the looks of it. And then when he does qualify, he wins. But he is the entertainment of that series.
See, what I would have said was he's a reverse Jarno Trulli.
But the reason he has been in there for this amount of time is also a reason why he is that good in that series.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Ben. We cut across you there.
No, I was going to say, like, I would have described him then as a reverse Jarno Trulli. I mean, the problem with starting your sales pitch with, do you remember Pastor Maldonado? It's like saying, do you remember herpes? Well, it's like herpes, but, and it's like that's not going to work.
Yeah, I get you. I know. He is better than Maldonado, I promise. But yeah, it would be those two that would kind of be the natural fits for me, him or Fukuzumi, just because of the Honda thing. I wonder how much pressure there is in there though from Honda at Toro Rosso.
I think they're probably being able to wield a little bit more power, actually, to be honest, because
better than Caveat.
because excuse me, they realise that maybe Red Bull need them, but also they've not embarrassed themselves as everyone thought that they would. They really haven't, and apparently their upgraded power unit is supposed to be a real step forward. And it doesn't seem to have affected reliability too much.
No, in the straight speed traps in Canada, they were in the top 5, weren't they? I think.
Yeah, I mean, and they've been fastest in the speed traps in a few seconds this season already. Which again,
Honda
just tells me that McLaren have walked into a rake.
On Toro Rosso / Red Bull.
I have to say, my fondness for Toro Rosso is growing season on season. I fell in love with their car again. I think their team wear is the best looking on the grid. I really like Brendan Hartley. Pierre Gasly's growing on me. The fact they're Honda powered tickles me as well, because I'll be honest with you, I've got a bit of a soft spot for Honda as well.
Yeah.
Mainly because of the Mugen years, but whatever. And so the thing in Wales right now, even though Sauber are my one true love, I have to say I've got a real soft spot for Toro Rosso these days, which is funny because when they first entered the sport, I hated them with a passion.
Same, because they took away my favourite team of ever.
They did.
And so I still haven't quite forgiven them, but when they do well, then I'm like, it's because of Nardi DNA, innit? So I have it both ways, and I will not be corrected on that until, I don't know, I grow up a little bit, but I refuse.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone after Pierre Gasly got his 4th, and they were saying, that's the hand of the ghost of Giancarlo Minardi, and I was like, yeah. But, hold on, Giancarlo Minardi isn't dead. What?
Frankly, not sure how I stand on Toro Rosso, really.
No, he's definitely not dead because I'm still subscribed to the Minardi YouTube channel where I don't know what he says, but after every Grand Prix he sits there looking really glum in front of his webcam talking about the race. But I don't actually know one word that he says. But occasionally they do stick up stuff about their historic Minardi days. So that's why I stay around on their channel.
But
yeah.
But we derailed ourselves there. So
Yeah, sorry.
quite dramatically, because we're off into GP2 and all kinds of things. But
Yeah.
that collision to me, like what happened afterwards? Because I had to turn off the race. I was so sick. Did anyone get a penalty announced during the race? I didn't see anything come out afterwards.
No,
Was it just
no.
a racing incident?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what did I miss? What was the race like? How'd you find it?
It was very static, actually. Possibly one of the snoozier Canadian Grand Prix of recent memory.
Nothing happened afterwards, except for Claire Williams.
Who was having a bit of a meltdown, actually, of basically saying things have got to change. And it's quite interesting to see her getting hit up, which was quite nice. Because...
please, go into detail. She had a mental breakdown.
Oh, I'm out.
That was... You hit me!
That was you?
Yeah.
Oh, no!
That's a top-class Failcast moment. I'd just been hit by the car in front of you. Like the one you were coming to lap, I guess. He spun me round, and as I was trying to get back on track, you just poof, out of nowhere.
Oh my god, Muppets grinning faces.
That's insane. That's incredible.
What
position were you?
I was about to have third or fourth, I think. Whatever it was.
Okay, so I've literally snatched defeat from the jaws of victory because I'm running 16th now, 17th.
It's alright, we get to see you on screen having a wheel change. Oh, Christ. It'd greyed you out, so I assumed that you weren't there, which is why I went to dive through. Because I wasn't sure which way you were going, so I was like, right, keep to the inside then. But no, ploughed in.
I didn't know which way I was going, to be honest, mate, because this car, when I press the throttle after a standstill, who knows which way it's going to rotate. Oh, mate, I'm sorry about that. I really didn't see you coming. I was completely blank.
Is that the first time that we've ever crashed into each other and one of us has gone out?
Well, it's definitely not the first time we've crashed into each other.
No, that's true.
But I think
First retirement.
I think it's probably the first time we've taken each other out. Oh no, hold on. Mexico last season. Although it wasn't. Yeah, we collided and I lost part of my front wing,
yes, you did.
and then that caused a chain of events that caused me to be out.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, Claire Williams. Let's try and leave with some dignity.
Well, dignity's overrated. Yeah, she was basically saying, because they were saying, right, Stroll's out, Sirotkin is now towards the back of the field. It's all looking a bit miserable, isn't it? And she was like, we've had some departures, and I can't remember exact words, but I'm going to say her exact words were, more heads will roll. And I was like, ooh. Yeah, and it was really hilarious how Stroll did no wrong whatsoever, and Hartley was like a crazed madman, and how disappointing it was for all of Canada that Brendan Hartley was just a terrible driver. But the key takeaway from that was heads will roll, and I was like, there's no one else left to sack Claire. You're going to have to start on other family members soon. Because
documentary, she's already had a brother, right?
Yeah, well, he's locked in some corner, isn't he?
Yeah, he's locked in a shed, searching through spare parts.
Devoted to books. Yeah, that's an interesting point. There's because having got other friends that I talk to who are in Formula One, and it's interesting that everyone's no one stays long at Williams at the moment because it's such a poisonous atmosphere to be involved in. And I've talked about this before, but I was like, is it the case that now they're at the back, they're actually pulling together and working forward? And I'm like, nope, it's still horrible there, and no one wants to go anywhere near. And so if they can continue to perpetuate this kind of poisonous environment, then people aren't going to come. You can't get the talent up. No one will want to stay, and it'll be a horrible place to work. So it's really interesting how they need to stop the spiral. I know we bang on about this all the time, but yeah, they need to stop. Essentially, is what my message is from that. But for the rest of the Canadian Grand Prix, for me, the interesting point was Alonso versus Leclerc for round 3. So that was good. Alonso was winning that until his car broke down. But they were saying like there was.
Frank had a curious leadership style already, but he had the credentials to back it up in F1. She does not really.
So Leclerc versus Alonso was really, really interesting for me at the lower end of the points, and Leclerc getting points at the end again was rather fabulous. As I'm a big Charles fan.
Can I interject very briefly? I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I know it's horribly rude, but on Leclerc, what I noticed, and I'm liking him more and more, not just because he's driving for Sauber, but his attitude is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Did you see what he said after he got points?
Remind us.
He said like he laid it all on the team. He didn't take credit for it. He said like the team has been phenomenal. He says like the form in the team has been just amazing. And I was thinking, I like you, Charles. I like you very much. Because he was so modest about the whole thing. He just said, I couldn't have done it without the team. Like the car has been great. So yeah, please continue. But I just wanted to give him recognition for his attitude. I think he's just been so level-headed and in the right mindset all the way through his debut season.
No, completely agree. And I think that's backed up by the point that we are lovers of the Merrickson on this podcast, and he's not far behind. And I think it continues to show that Leclerc is the real deal, but we need to stop being so harsh on Marcus Ericsson, because year on year he improves and gets better and better. He is, for those of us who need a replacement Diniz and a replacement Sutil, he is what we need. He is our Sutiz or Dinil.
Yes, he's my Danil. He's my crack cocaine.
Rookies I have ever seen.
Yeah, he's fab. So Ericsson's race was ruined because he had to come in for a front wing because of problems of coming out from that first lap incident. But what was really interesting was that even with a front wing change and doing other bits and bobs, still managed to beat Van Dorn home, and Van Dorn was second last. And I know you've been saying for quite a while, Ben, that you've been really unimpressed with Van Dorn. That race was possibly the most disappointed that I've been in him for bloody ages. And yeah, it was light years between him and Alonso, and I'm not really... Something needs to change there. And it was just nice to see Verstappen not crashing. That was quite nice. But the actual race itself was... not stellar in the slightest, and so I'm really interested to see how the cars will go, because next race we're off to Paul Ricard, which is a new circuit.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. I think it's been a travesty that we haven't had a French Grand Prix for 10 years. I like that it's a circuit that a lot of the drivers are not going to be hugely familiar with, and that we've never seen these cars there. So I'm totally into all that. Quick word on Verstappen, because I love to give him a kick every now and then.
Yep.
What I find interesting is he has one good race, and then Christian Horner does a complete 180. The F1 press does a complete 180. Yep. Everyone's like, oh, well, clearly he's got over these problems. Like, it's one race. It's one race.
And I found it really interesting. I saw you tweet about it, where he basically said, if people keep talking to me... Yeah, exactly. The gloating after the good race. But also how aggressive he was coming into the race of... I'm going to headbutt the next person that asks me about why I crash. Stop crashing then, you twat. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to say with my thing. You know, it's like, well, I think the key really is just to not crash, dickhead.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah. So my continued Marmite of yes, he's fabulous on his day, but oh my god, I do want to rattle him to probably unconsciousness. Continues. Your car is so oversteery.
Yeah, the setup is awful. Turns out that the setup for a...
asking questions when you throw $1 million piece of equipment into walls and other cars on a regular.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, it turns out, Simon, that a setup devised for a 2017 McLaren is actually crap on a 2007 Ferrari.
No way. You're closing on
Like-
Izumi though. You might have. I don't know if you'll get him by the end. So I guess as we're coming up for 2 laps to go, was there anything else on your list of things, topics that we haven't got to?
Not really, but there was some more stuff from the race I wanted to touch on, or not just the race itself actually, but recent news. I too saw at least after you mentioned it, that brief snippet about all of Canada is disappointed. I think all of Canada is disappointed in Lance Stroll, not because he crashed. I mean, they're just disappointed in Lance Stroll. I saw they had a Lance Stroll grandstand, and I was thinking that is. I'd love to have been
it.
I'd love to have been a fly on the wall in that meeting. But
interest real fast.
We'll come
to
round
me,
that
it's
later.
like so. It's like Silverstone having a Timmy Mallet stand. It's like what?
Mallet's mallet.
What? Exactly. I just don't get it. I mean, he cannot be popular. He cannot, because he's unbearable. Stupid eyebrows and dour and miserable and so unwilling to handle criticism. Apparently, though, I did hear that he's in the team again next year.
Really?
Yes.
Christ.
Which makes me lose all respect for Williams, to be honest.
It's interesting because I do love a little bit of Will Buxton, and Will Buxton does seem to be friends with Lance Stroll. So at every opportunity, not only does he make harsh puns everywhere, he continues to talk about how Lance Stroll does really fantastic starts, which has been nice and is great. But the reason why he's doing great starts from further back is because he can't qualify particularly well, and that was of last year when against Massa he was awful in qualifying. And has now borne out in the AI of this game, where they refuse to let him out qualify Massa at any opportunity. But yeah, I think as Sorokin gets more and more of his feet under the table and gets used to the tyres, I'm starting to see that Stroll hasn't really lifted himself massively above from where he was last year, which is a bit of a disappointment. I was hoping for a step forward from him, and I'm not sure a third year at the moment for me is warranted, but it's so difficult to understand with that car and that team.
I really don't think he's earned the third year. I was someone who was preaching sort of patience with him through his first season and most of the second season, just because I rated him because of how he did in the junior categories. I thought, there's got to be something there. But it turns out no, there really isn't. He's the talent poltergeist.
His demeanour is what gets on my nerves. He's not earned the right to be that miserable yet.
The third year is Lawrence.
Like that. The question that came in from David during that was, Lewis Hamilton, will he be in F1 next year? It seems to me like he's losing interest really fast. I think he will, but I think it will be on a short-term deal.
Yeah, well, I think if Bottas stays, I think that'll be part of his arrangement.
Yeah.
Like, I'll stay if Bottas stays, because we said in the last episode, but he seems really desperate to make sure he doesn't go up against Daniel Ricciardo. to the point, like when someone obsesses over something. Mm-hmm. It's like people who, those people who like super zealously banging on the wall of the neighbours, like even during the daytime when nothing's going on, like preemptively stopping a party.
Yeah.
Him in the championship. Rosberg has done it. Why not Valtteri?
It's a good question. I think it's one of those things that if and when that happens, then maybe his attitude will change. But right now, I think he feels that Bottas is someone who's not really a threat to him, who's very amicable and doesn't really tread on anyone's toes, and I think that's what he wants. Excuse me. I think a bonus is that he started to sort of step up, and now he'll pick up the points that Lewis doesn't, which is really all he needs to do.
Yeah.
So I actually think you might see the same lineup at Mercedes next year. Although I'd be a little disappointed if that was the case. And it's not that I don't have fondness for Bottas. I just think he took far too long to find his feet at Mercedes.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd agree, and I think that going back to the whole what do you do with a problem with Ricardo, the problem is that you've got people with established number twos that will back them up, and that's the way how those teams are set up. And it will probably be written into Vettel's terms and conditions that Raikkonen gets to get kept on for yet another year before he finally gets put out of his poor misery at the end of next year, ready for Charles to step in as a replacement. Whether or not that will then be allowed if he continues to kick ass elsewhere, and that will be like Vettel's reign in Ferrari ending and then he leaves or goes somewhere else, I don't know, because otherwise it's those people that are keeping, I think, the changing of the guard in general for Formula One.
I think part of the problem we have is, 5 years ago in particular, you and I were very concerned about the future of the sport because we didn't feel there was low-level talent coming up through the ranks, and now we have.
Toto Wolff is a smart guy. If Hamilton wants a one-year deal, I'm not sure Toto passes up the chance to get Danny.
Maybe not, actually. I'm not entirely sold on that, actually. But for me, it strikes me that Lewis sort of brings a lot of money into the team. He's got that sort of very marketable presence, and he's made the team his own. Yeah. I actually think Toto would keep him for one more year. What worries me is that we're entering an era now where drivers are reaching 300 Grand Prix, which historically never really happened, and we have the opposite problem to 5 years ago, where now there's like this glut of really promising young talent, so much so that Red Bull's basically churning them out like burgers and casting them into the garbage. And then you've got people like Raikkonen, to some but a lesser extent, Lewis and Sebastian, but they've got a few good years left. But you had Massa as well. You just have guys that are holding on maybe a little bit too long. And I think now definitely Kimi's the roadblock.
We are reaching players with 40 goal seasons in their 40s. In tennis, we have Grand Slam winners at 40.
I think
true.
I think what it alludes to me, it's probably too big a topic to dive in at the end now, but this is symptomatic of a 20-car grid. And if we had 26 cars, there would be room for the talent, as well as having our elder states that could be allowed to play around and stay. And so if Formula One looked at being able to increase their grid size and make it more sustainable without compromising quality and so on and so forth in the areas that matter to racing, then we'd be okay, in my opinion. And because I see nothing wrong with people getting to 300 Grand Prix, but it's a shame that comes at the expense of new talent. There should be room for both.
I heartily agree.
Give us stories like arrows, Minody ache again.
Exactly. Give me HRT, bitches. So I think that was quite an interesting podcast. We've meandered ourselves around quite a lot, but we
I cannot think, mate. I'm so full of cold and painkillers. I'm surprised I managed to speak at
But you did
all,
good.
to be honest.
You did.
So
good.
I'm sure it wasn't my best work, but I will endeavour to be back to normal by next time, so I can have a cogent thought in my head.
Absolutely. Any shouts
my-
for your potential winner for Paul Ricard, or is it just too open to think?
Oh. Do you know, I think this will be the hardest one to call this year, simply because we don't really know. I'm gonna say Vettel Ferrari win.
I'm gonna say Mercedes because of the massive straight. That's all.
I see why you've gone there, but I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm going to be shifted out of my position. I'm going to say Ferrari, and I actually think on race pace, Ferrari actually have the faster engine. I think there's something about the Mercedes power unit this year that's stopping them from turning it up. That's the only thing I can think of to explain why at some circuits they seem to have a real deficit. It seems to me they're not actually utilising the full power of the unit. So I'm still going to say it'll be a Ferrari win. Probably Vettel. I hope for Raikkonen, but hope springs eternal and doesn't deliver anything. That's my theory, at least. Well, thank you very much, sir. I'm sorry that I took you out of the Grand Prix, but that's one for the highlights reel.
That is, we should when we do our 10-year commemorative edition, I shall freeze frame that and I shall have it on my wall.
Sure, it's Vettel with the strategy.
Indeed. So thank you very much to David, and there was someone else that did comment a few times earlier on. It's Fabio Games, and happy Le Mans rest of the weekend for those of you that are watching it. Let's hope this one does not get copyright struck with the FIA. Our last episode was going for a 30-day period of it being reviewed. Once that's completed and they realise that it's just a computer game and not actual real F1, it'll be available for people to then chortle at how terrible our Grand Prix predictions for Canada were. But until next time, you guys will take care. Have a great French Grand Prix, and vive l'Union. Bye for now.
Bye.
Oh, it was so croaky.